feels like I've been here all before. Radio humming, the world feels right. Every little thing's in tune tonight. Shadows fade, the truth comes through. Fresh start in the morning blue. Hey, now blue sky shining down. Left your feet don't touch the ground. Laugh it off, let the good times stay. Oh yeah, it's a blue sky day. Oh, coffee, steam, and a smile breaks free. Simple joys are enough for me. Stones roll out, but I don't mind. Sun's still waiting on the other side. Turn it up, feel the sound. Good vibrations all around. Hey, now blue sky shining down. Lift your feet, don't touch the ground. Laugh it off, let the good times stay. Oh yeah, it's a blue sky day. No heavy weight, no looking back. Just open roads and a steady track. Hands in the air, feel the sway. Let the light carry us away. Hey, now blue sky shining down. Spin around, let the music play loud. Every color's here to stay. Oh yeah, it's a blue sky day. Oh, wake up, sunlight tapping on the door. Feels like I've been here all before. Radio humming, the world feels right. Every little thing's in tune tonight. Shadows fade, the truth comes through. Fresh start in the morning blue. Hey now, blue sky shining down. Lift your feet, don't touch the ground. Laugh it off, let the good times stay. Oh yeah, it's a blue sky day.
Woo! Good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat. I so do appreciate you being here. Smash that like button, share this out with your friends, subscribe to the channel, hit the subscribe button on YouTube. You can follow me on Rumble. I'm also on Facebook. You guys can go like my page, Conservative Cat. Type it in your search bar. We've got so much to get to this morning, so I'm just going to jump right in. It is a packed show, a very packed show. So, Jerome Powell, oh boy, the White House said, don't look at us, don't look at us. We're not the ones looking into Jerome Powell regarding the Jerome Powell probe. The White House said, it's not us, it's the DOJ. So we're going to talk a little bit about Jerome Powell this morning. And then we're also going to be talking about Trump saying that if the Supreme Court, and this is going to be really bad, if the Supreme Court of the United States rules against these tariffs, it's going to be bad, but I think that there's a workaround. So there is an alternative, says Kevin Hassett, Trump administration officials. So we're going to talk about how the country would be screwed if the Supreme Court of the United States rules a certain way in these two cases. Before them, we were expecting a ruling on Friday. I think we're going to get the ruling on Wednesday, tomorrow, but we'll have to see. So Supreme Court of the United States possibly ruling against the tariffs. And then a little bit later, I do want to talk about Democrats, specifically an Illinois Democrat candidate, calling for Trump to be impeached regarding Maduro and his capture. Really what it is, it's enforcing a grand jury indictment. That is what happened with the whole Maduro thing. Okay, so if you want to impeach him over that, I guess. So over the weekend, you guys probably saw the headlines. Okay, there is a DOJ investigation into the Federal Reserve Chair, Jerome Powell. And as you know, Democrats have been crying and bitching and moaning. Political retribution. Donald Trump is going after Jerome Powell. Donald Trump is trying to kill the independence of the Fed. Okay, let's pause here. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, however, told reporters yesterday that the president did not order the probe. He's not even in charge of it. It was the DOJ, and they kind of acted alone, according to Caroline Leavitt. I don't know if I completely believe it, but what would be so bad if the White House did, say, hey, nudge, nudge, DOJ, look into this. The math isn't mathing. And we're going to get to exactly what Jerome Powell is accused of. But Caroline Leavitt swears, that this has nothing to do with the White House and that this is an action of the DOJ. Although they are deeply disappointed with Jerome Powell's performance, Trump and the White House had nothing to do with the probe. Okay, she was asked whether Trump commanded the Justice Department to investigate Powell, and she had one-word answer: no. Take a listen.
Trump has mentioned on multiple occasions that the administration could probably bring a lawsuit against him. Did the president ever direct DOJ officials to open an investigation into Powell?
No.
And can you reassure the American public that his longstanding criticisms and public comments about Powell had nothing to do with the investigation?
Look, the president has every right to criticize the Fed chair. He has a First Amendment right, just like all of you do. And one thing for sure, the president's made it quite clear, is Jerome Powell is bad at his job. As for whether or not Jerome Powell is a criminal, that's an answer the Department of Justice is going to have to find out. And it looks like they intend to find that out.
Okay. So, if you don't believe her, whatever. I mean, I don't think that there's a bad thing about this. Okay. If he has got nothing to hide, if Jerome Powell has got nothing to hide, then what's the big deal if Donald Trump even directed the White House, which according to Caroline Leavitt, they have no hand in this whatsoever. So she had more to say. She explained that although the president has been dissatisfied with Powell's performance, specifically his allergy, it's so fascinating. He was going to he lowered the rates, the interest rates under Biden-Harris to try to, kind of put lipstick on a pig. But, in this booming economy that we've got here, a very bright economy, he won't lower the interest rates, Jerome Powell. And yeah, he clearly has an allergy towards lowering the rates to get the economy going, to keep the economy on the right track. He doesn't want to lower the rates. Okay. And that doesn't mean, though, that that Donald Trump wants to go after Jerome Powell criminally. Okay. And the decision to investigate these massive cost overruns, that is what is at the center of this Jerome Powell probe, is these massive cost overruns at the reserve. They've racked it all up, the cost of these construction projects, and it looks a little funky, definitely from the outside looking in. I don't know. I mean, the DOJ is going to have to investigate, but Trump has in the past likened Powell's renovation job to, quote, building a basement into the Potomac River. So I'm going to play a clip. This clip was from November. So Trump has commented on this whole racking up of costs, this massive cost overrun. They said it was going to cost this. Then they are running over like by $700 million or something. So Caroline Leavitt's comments here come after Powell said on Sunday that the Justice Department served the Federal Reserve with grand jury subpoenas tied to his prior testimony about the central bank's Washington headquarters renovation project. Okay, so he has already given testimony about this construction project, the renovation project at the Fed, and he warned that the threat of criminal charges is being used to pressure the Fed to lower interest rates. To be honest with you, if that was true, okay, if Donald Trump, let's just, play this out. The libs say that Donald Trump is directing the DOJ to file or to threaten the Federal Reserve with criminal charges and Jerome Powell. And he's doing this as a way to pressure the Fed to lower interest rates. To be honest with you, I don't really care, right? Even if Donald Trump was doing that, I'd say, pretty smart. We want those interest rates lowered for the economy to stay on track and to get better. That's something that's very America first. And I'd say clever, President Donald Trump. I don't really care if he was doing that, but he's not, according to Caroline Leavitt. The inquiry into, the Federal Reserve and the testimony by Jerome Powell, this is all headed up by U.S. Attorney Janine Pirro. She used to be on Fox News. She's examining Jerome Powell's public testimony, where he said that the project was going to be, roughly this, but it is $700 million over budget. And the cost of the renovations at the Federal Reserve buildings, $2.5 billion. Okay, so this is a lot of money. And it would, $700 million over budget. Like, that's not just a little hiccup. Okay, and it definitely warrants, it's odd, definitely warrants some sort of probe, making sure nothing nefarious is going on. So Donald Trump, I want to play this clip. This was from back in November. Okay, so he spoke at a U.S. Saudi investment forum back in November of 2025, and this wasn't billed as a roast of Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell at the time. It should have been. Okay, it might as well have been, because he roasted him hard at this thing, this investment forum. And the president, he was touting the Gulf Kingdom's agreement to invest trillions of dollars into the U.S., which is a big deal. That happened back in November. But he also, while speaking at this forum, managed to zing the Fed chair over his enormously expensive renovation projects. These are expensive. And his slow pace, Jerome Powell, at raising the interest rates since the president has taken office in January of 2025. Take a listen to President Donald Trump back in November.
Job. To me, it's the easiest job in the world. You play golf for 28, 29 days, then you go and make a little speech, tell everybody, in the case of the current guy, the wrong information because he has no clue. But if you have good instincts, it's all based on instincts. I see they want to hire 3,000 economists, 3,000, to report to the Fed chairman. What are they going to do? Take all this information? 3,000 economists. That's why they're spending $4 billion on renovating a building that should have cost $25 million to do. They should have spent $25 million. They're building a basement into the Potomac River. I could have told them that's very tough to do and it doesn't work and it's very expensive. But they're up to $4 billion headed by this clown. but we have 3,000, think of it. They want to hire 3,000 economists. So they took a poll and they interviewed 71 people. And of the 71 people, 2 people got it right. 2 people. One was a great economist whose name I won't tell you because I don't like him personally, but he is good. And the other one that got it the
All right. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. That was Donald Trump back in November, criticizing, really roasting Jerome Powell, the Fed chair. And look, the president has the First Amendment right, like all of us, to criticize Jerome Powell. He is, I believe, being slow on these interest rates. And it's really not fair because he lowered the rates under the Harris-Biden administration, but is not doing that under the Trump administration. And he's playing favorites, ultimately, at the end of the day. And one thing is for sure, the president has made it clear that he doesn't like Jerome Powell's performance. That doesn't mean he's behind the probe. Caroline Leavitt said this is a project of the Department of Justice. Whether or not Jerome is a criminal, that is an answer for the Department of Justice to have to find out. And I don't know if you're spending over $700 million on a construction project, and you're that over budget. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to find out there's nefarious things going on. But we'll have to find that out. Now, what people don't understand is that this is been going on for a long time. Like, you're going to hear liberals and Democrats screaming, this is retribution. They're going after Jerome Powell, or Donald Trump is doing that because he doesn't like him and he's going after his political enemies. No. Actually, Anna Paulina Luna, she's a representative out of Florida, Republican. This was in July of 2025, where she referred Powell over to the DOJ for misleading Congress over the overruns. Okay, so it's over budget. Powell misled Congress on how much this was going to cost, and she labeled that criminal. Okay, in an X post. So I'm going to show you the X post here, what she had to say at the time, back in July. Folks, this is not anything new. Okay. Members of Congress take issue with, what Jerome Powell is doing as far as the renovation costs. So she goes, I have formally referred Jerome Powell to the DOJ for criminal investigation. So this should have taken place a long time ago. The fact that we're already in January 2026, this was in July of 2025. Chairman Powell knowingly misled both Congress and the executive branch officials about the true nature of the taxpayer-funded project. Lying under oath is a serious offense, especially from someone tasked with overseeing the monetary system, our monetary system in public trust. That's what she said on X at the time, okay, in July of 2025, which, this is not new. Chairman Powell knowingly misled Congress and executive branch officials. And you've got a member of Congress saying that and formally referring him over to the DOJ. Now, I do want to say that Trump has called out the chairman for these huge, ever-growing costs of renovating the reserve buildings. And he has even threatened a lawsuit, Donald Trump. He says, quote, we're thinking, and this has been, years or months ago, we're thinking of bringing a suit against Powell. This is what he put on Truth Social, for incompetence, because I think of it, these aren't outstanding buildings. Okay, this is what he said. Because when you think of it, these 2 buildings, these are not 2 outstanding buildings, okay, that would warrant these overruns. Okay, it's going to end up costing more than $4 billion. I saw a price tag of $2.5 billion. I guess it's $4 billion. Perhaps the highest price of construction. This was what Donald Trump said. Again, Democrats' highest price of construction per square foot in the history of the world. Levitt also took to Fox News yesterday, and she reiterated that this is a DOJ thing. It's not a White House thing. The DOJ is in charge of the investigation. Take a listen.
No question on the independence of the Fed. There are some concerned at this moment based on the new actions by the Feds to open a probe into the Federal Reserve Chair, Jerome Powell. President Trump has made it very clear how he feels about the Federal Reserve Chair and his actions while chairing the Fed. Can you assure independence of the Federal Reserve, and where will this be going next, this probe?
Well, look, as for the criminal probe, you'll have to ask the Department of Justice about that. They are in charge. I do know one thing is for sure. Jerome Powell has proven he's not very good at his job. As to whether he's a criminal, that's an answer the Department of Justice is going to have to find. And whether or not they do, I defer that to them.
There you have it. Like I said, everybody knows that Jerome Powell cut rates in a bad economy to help Kamala and Joe Biden. He started cutting rates under the Biden administration amidst Kamala entering the race for 2024. He cut the rates, but he won't cut the rates in a hot economy. And he wants to do that because it's going to hurt Donald Trump and possibly Republicans in the 2026 midterm. So that is what's going on. I think that Mr. Powell is an enemy of this nation. Who would do that? Cutting rates would be good for the economy, good for the American people. Clearly, he's trying to act as the fourth branch of government to hurt Trump after spending billions of dollars on BS renovation to his office. So let's actually take a listen. I'm going to share it with you. Jerome Powell and what he had to say about the probe. Here we go.
On Friday, the Department of Justice served the Federal Reserve with grand jury subpoenas, threatening a criminal indictment related to my testimony before the Senate Banking Committee last June. That testimony concerned in part a multi-year project to renovate historic Federal Reserve office buildings. I have deep respect for the rule of law and for accountability in our democracy. No one, certainly not the chair of the Federal Reserve, is above the law. But this unprecedented action should be seen in the broader context of the administration's threats and ongoing pressure. This new threat is not about my testimony last June or about the renovation of the Federal Reserve buildings. It is not about Congress's oversight role. The Fed, through testimony and other public disclosures, made every effort to keep Congress informed about the renovation project. Those are pretexts. The threat of criminal charges is a consequence of the Federal Reserve setting interest rates based on our best assessment of what will serve the public, rather than following the preferences of the president. This is about whether the Fed will be able to continue to set interest rates based on evidence and economic conditions, or whether instead monetary policy will be directed by political pressure or intimidation. I have served at the Federal Reserve under 4 administrations, Republicans and Democrats alike. In every case, I have carried out my duties without political fear or favor, focused solely on our mandate of price stability and maximum employment. Public service sometimes requires standing firm in the face of threats. I will continue to do the job the Senate confirmed me to do, with integrity and a commitment to serving the American people. Thank you.
Okay. So that was Jerome Powell. Look, folks, real simple. Jerome Powell, inflation is cool, jobs are strong, the economy is hot by the Fed's own standards. Okay. And what does Powell do? He does nothing. Rates are staying high. Mortgages stay crushed. Small businesses stay squeezed. And why? Why is he doing this? Why is he not cutting the rates? That would help, Trump. That's why he's not cutting the rates, because it would juice housing, it would lower credit costs, it would put real money back into voters' pockets, and that's apparently unacceptable. Although it was totally fine when the economy wasn't hot under, Biden, and when the Democrats needed help by getting those interest rates lowered. Rates came down. Jerome Powell did that. It's funny how that works. So instead of following the data, Powell is following a political agenda. Okay, he'll tell you he's apolitical, he's independent, and he's data driven in that little statement there. But the data says rates should come down. Okay, and this isn't about fighting inflation anymore, which is why that rate was going to go up, because they were going to fight inflation, but inflation is cooling. Okay. This is about controlling the timing and the politics, because what's the number one issue people care about when going to the ballot box? And it's midterms are coming up 2026. They're practically here. What's the number one issue? The economy. If you start putting money back into voters' pockets, they're going to vote for Republicans. They're going to vote Trump at the ballot box. And, they're going to freeze these rates in a strong economy. And he's doing exactly that. And it's really just about politics at this point. So it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see what the DOJ finds. If Powell was corrupt, if there's actual corruption, so like say they are money laundering, would be what I would guess is what they're looking into. They say, oh, it's going to cost $700 million, and they don't actually put that into the construction and the renovation of these two buildings. That would be worst case scenario, I guess. They could just find that Powell was incompetent and didn't do his due diligence to find, or the Federal Reserve didn't do their due diligence to find lower construction costs. They were negligent or ignorant when it came to the taxpayer-funded renovations. Or it could be both. You could find, hey, there's a little bit of corruption here, there's a little bit of incompetence here. There's a chance that they'll find neither, and that Powell was just, spending money like, a teenage girl who gets daddy's credit card to go to the mall. Could just be that. He just did a tremendous job at spending $2.5 billion. Trump threw out a number of $4 billion. To this day, I don't know what it is. I know that they're running over by a whole lot, and that this is a very costly construction project, renovation project. So we'll have to keep our eyes on that, and I'll provide you updates as the DOJ conducts their investigation. And at the end of the day, it's America first. If Donald Trump directed the DOJ to probe Jerome Powell as an attempt to kind of threaten him or get him to reconsider cutting the rates, am I opposed to that? Absolutely not. That's America first. So let's shift gears. I've got so much to get to this today. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel. Market watchers, we're kind of waiting. Market watchers are waiting on pins and needles for this to come down. The United States Supreme Court, they've got a couple of decisions before them. These are combined cases. So they've been combined. It's Learning Resources Incorporated versus Donald Trump and VOS Selections versus Trump. I'll explain who's really behind these two cases. But they're going after Donald Trump and the Trump administration. And the Supreme Court of the United States has to determine if Trump can use the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. This is the IEEPA, the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. Now, this is what Trump has been using to impose tariffs. Okay, so we have done an entire show. It's on the in the archives. You guys can go check it out on tariffs. But Donald Trump has been using the IEEPA to levy tariffs on other countries. And should the Supreme Court of the United States support Donald Trump's use of this act, then he's got no worries about reimbursement. Okay, reimbursing importers who have paid those tariffs or paid into the tariff provisions. Okay, so he's got no worry about having to do that if the Supreme Court rules in favor of Trump using the IEEPA to impose these tariffs. Okay, now the Supreme Court of the United States could go a different direction, allowing Trump limited powers under this act, but requiring limited repayments. Okay, so some repayments be made to those importers who paid already into those tariff provisions. Many expected a ruling to come down Friday. We didn't get it. So the Supreme Court of the United States, they're slated to kind of make decisions on Wednesday. So I'm thinking it's going to come down then. The ruling, but Trump took to Truth Social yesterday and shared his concern and sounded alarm bells here saying, hey, should the Supreme Court of the United States rule against the use of IEEPA, this is going to be really bad. We're going to be screwed. So here's what he said on Truth Social. He said the actual numbers that we would have to pay back if, for any reason, the Supreme Court were to rule against the United States of America on tariffs would be many hundreds of billions of dollars. And that doesn't include the amount of payback that countries and companies would require for the investments they're making on building plants, factories, and equipment for the purpose of being able to avoid the payment of tariffs. Okay, so let me pause there and then we'll continue with this Truth Social. So tariffs, Trump has been using them as a means of national security. And we've talked about China. The whole Venezuela thing is brilliant, beautiful. Capturing Maduro. Maduro was pretty much running drugs for China. China has taken over a lot of South America. They get into these poor countries. They promise infrastructure like high-speed rails or something. And they say, hey, Venezuela, we'll build you a high-speed rail. They didn't exactly say this to Venezuela. I'm just giving you an example. But hey, Venezuela, we're going to build you some pretty awesome infrastructure. And Venezuela says, that's great. But what do we have to do in exchange? Well, you're going to run our drugs into the United States because we want to take the United States down from within. And they've controlled, the supply chain. I reference all of the time the COVID. In 2020, when he ran out of toilet paper, yeah, that's because our supply chain, like nobody in the US makes toilet paper and we run out of things. And we shouldn't be reliant on hostile and adversaries, hostile governments, adversaries, people who also utilize child labor, by the way. So Donald Trump, what he's been doing is using the tariffs as a form of national security and encouraging American companies and other countries to come to the United States, other countries, companies in other countries, to come to the United States, not invest in other places of the world, but invest here and build their plants here and their factories here. And he's using the tariffs as a way of, hey, you wouldn't want to pay these tariffs, would you? So you want to produce here in the United States, don't you? Like that's what Trump is doing with these tariffs, and it's chef's kiss, absolutely beautiful. Here's what he says, and I'm going to go on with his Truth Social post because this is important. He says, when these investments are added, they're taking about trillions of dollars, or we're talking about trillions of dollars here. So if they take this all away, we're potentially losing out on trillions of dollars, but we're also going to have to pay back billions in the form of reimbursements, hundreds of billions of dollars in the form of reimbursements if we collected a tariff from importers using the IEEPA. You get what I'm saying? Like, but we're missing out on trillions of dollars because now those companies from other countries, American companies, are not going to produce domestically here. If the Supreme Court of the United States rules against Donald Trump using the IEEPA, they are anti-American, and it's a ruling against the United States, and it's not America first. Okay. He said it would be a complete mess. It's also almost impossible for our country to pay. Anybody who says that it can be done quickly or easily done is false, inaccurate, or totally misunderstood answer to this very large, complex question. He says in the Truth Social post, it may not be possible, but if it were, it would be dollars that would be so large, it would take many years to figure out what the number we're even talking about is, and who, when, and where to pay. So remember, when America shines brightly, the world shines brightly. In other words, if the Supreme Court rules against the United States on this national security bonanza, we're screwed. Okay, so, and then he signed it, President Donald J. Trump. Okay, so what he's saying here is, we've already collected money, billions, hundreds of billions of dollars from these countries in the form of tariffs. Okay, and it would be pretty much damn near impossible to pay that money back. We don't know who to pay it back to. And not to mention the trillions of dollars we're going to be losing when companies from other countries, American companies, don't invest here. They've already invested here to avoid the tariffs. And now we're going to be losing out on that domestic production. And we're going to be losing out on trillions. So the plaintiffs named in this suit, so there's plaintiffs who are going against President Donald Trump's tariffs. The plaintiffs are a conglomeration of small businesses. And I want to be clear about something. Most Americans are pro-tariff. Okay. This suit has been brought about by these conglomeration of small businesses, but really the backers of this suit, the backers of this legal challenge, is this Federalist Society founder. Okay, his name is Leonard Leo, and he was instrumental in steering judicial appointments for Trump 45. But now he's no longer in Trump 47 camp. Okay, he's not in the circle of trust, this guy, and I think he's bitter about it. He's a judicial activist, leans conservative, and he was a part of Trump's crew in 45, but he's no longer a part of Trump's crew. And he's, backing these organizations, Leo's organizations backed by Donors Trust, have poured major money to see this endeavor through, to see Trump's tariffs fail. And I just want to be clear, because the plaintiffs, these are not backed by regular people who are opposed to Trump using the IEEPA, that act to impose tariffs. So going about it in really what the IEEPA does, it allows Trump to impose tariffs for national security purposes. And these plaintiffs say that he can't do that. Really what this is, it sounds like a disgruntled guy who's got a bone to pick with President Donald Trump. And it sounds like he's backing this legal challenge because he's disgruntled, really, at the end of the day. So Secretary of Treasury, Scott Bessent, he has sort of a different tone here on the Supreme Court of the United States ruling, whatever it will be. He seems to be not super optimistic, but there's members of the Trump administration who are talking about different measures or different avenues that they can take to impose tariffs as a way of national security. Okay, so Secretary of Treasury Scott Bessent, he said on Thursday last week that he expects a mishmash, so a very confusing ruling. That's kind of what I'm expecting too. I think that it's going to be like a mixture where he has to pay some of the tariffs back, or some of the money that he collected via the tariff provisions that he imposed on importers. And that's going to be annoying. But here's what Bessent says. He says, quote, "What is not in doubt is our ability to continue collecting tariffs at roughly the same level in terms of overall revenues," he said during an appearance in Minneapolis. "What is in doubt, and it's a real shame for the American people, was the president loses flexibility to use those tariffs for both national security and for negotiating leverage." Okay, so national security seems to be the thrust behind Trump's desired tariffs. Okay, so yesterday, he turned that ability. Okay, he's using the IEEPA, this act, to impose tariffs against the Iranian regime. Okay, so he's using that act to impose tariffs as a means of national security. Here's what Trump said out on Truth Social. Yesterday, he said, "Effective immediately, any country doing business with the Islamic Republic of Iran will pay a tariff of 25% on any and all business being done with the United States of America." However, other members of the cabinet offered some more optimism. So Secretary of Treasury Scott Bessent says, "Oh man, like it's going to be a mishmash. It's going to be a confusing ruling. We're going to have to pay back some." But I think that Kevin Hassett is more optimistic. He's the National Economic Council director, and he said that the administration has workarounds. So if they can't use the IEEPA, they're going to do something else. Okay, so in the event SCOTUS does not rule in their favor, and like I said, if SCOTUS does not rule in his favor, they are anti-American. But Kevin Hassett said that there's other measures. They have alternative measures if the Supreme Court rules against President Donald Trump's use of emergency powers to impose sweeping levies. He says, quote, "There was a big call with all the principals to talk about if the Supreme Court were to rule against the IEEPA tariff, what would be the next step?" He said this, Kevin Hassett, on Squawk on the Street. This was CNBC. And he was referring, to the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. Like, what is our next step if we can't use this act anymore to impose tariffs as a means of national security? So he says there are a lot of other legal authorities that can reproduce deals that we've made with other countries, and we can basically do so immediately. So apparently they're going to, sounds like Trump's got a hell of a team on his side, like with the Maduro capture, like attorneys, lawyers, they're advising him on how to use the law to America's advantage. And they're kind of pissed. I think the Democrats, the establishment, you've got this conservative guy that used to be in Trump's circle back when he was 45. They're all pissed, and here's why. He's using the law. No other president has done this, but he's actually using the law to make things better for Americans. So he goes on, Hassett, and he says, "So our expectation is that we're going to win, and if we don't win, then we know we've got other tools that we could use to get us to the same place. So Hassett said U.S. Trade Representative Jameson Greer has been closely involved in mapping out these contingency plans. So he didn't say what measures the Trump administration would take or what alternative measures they would take. He just said that there are some, and that somebody is, this trade representative is actually mapping out these contingency plans, and they're ready to pull the trigger on it. And it'll basically not stop the Trump administration from imposing these tariffs using as a means of national security. So let's get one thing straight. Tariffs, it's not just about trade. Okay, they are about power. They're a very powerful thing, and Trump is uniquely skilled at igniting national conversation and flipping foreign policy on its head. And he struck the mother lode when he pushed tariffs as aggressively as he did. Okay, whether people love it or hate it, the entire world has been forced to relearn what tariffs are and why they matter. And that alone, I think, is a strategic win, because now you get Americans with this thinking that, hey, doing business using the American consumer base is not a right, it's a privilege. And you've got Americans rethinking that. You've got Americans thinking about domestic production. And that alone is a strategic win. It used to be where our revenue was generated solely from the U.S. taxpayer, and there was no collection from tariffs. And we're constantly getting screwed. 90%, 99% of our revenue comes from the U.S. taxpayer, and like 1%, like under Joe Biden. And I'm, don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but 1% under Joe Biden comes from tariffs. And it never used to be that way. It used to be more like 60-40. And this was actually Alexander Hamilton's model, that a lot of the revenue should be generated from tariffs, and that, hey, the American consumer base, this is a privilege to have them. And it kind of forces the U.S. taxpayer to think about this differently and to not be screwed and just bend over and take it. Okay. And we have to be the sole source of revenue. That's no longer the case under President Donald Trump. And Americans are rethinking about all this money we've paid into taxes. And did we have to do that all these years? No, the answer is no. And Donald Trump has provided an alternative, and Americans kind of like it. A lot of Americans like the tariff policy. For decades, America was treated trade as purely economic issue, while our adversaries treated it as economic warfare. Okay. Trump blew up that outdated thinking. Like, this is very outdated to think that tariffs, trade, that's purely an economic issue. No, our adversaries don't view it that way. Okay. And he reminded everyone, allies and enemies alike, that access to the American market is a privilege, not a right. Okay. Tariffs equal leverage, not punishment. And here's what the media never explains properly, is that tariffs aren't just taxes, they're leverage. And when the U.S. imposes tariffs, foreign governments are forced to change their behavior. We want to live in a world, the libs, they're all bleeding hearts, and they always say world peace, world peace. We want to live in a world where child labor isn't a thing. Okay. And where our Nike shoes, where you don't buy your Nike shoes and have to feel bad about it being made by some child in China with a gun pointed to their head. Okay. We want to live in a world that's not like that. Okay. And supply chains are forced to diversify from hostile regimes. American industry gains room to rebuild and compete. And we have American companies choosing America to do production here. which is jobs, which is good for our economy here. That's why tariffs are a national security tool. Because if we rely on our foreign adversaries for steel, energy components, pharmaceuticals, microchips, we're not sovereign. We're not truly our own nation. And we're vulnerable because they don't like us. And they're trying to actively destroy us from within, whether that's fentanyl or TikTok, several things they've been doing. China has tried to destroy the United States from within itself. They're setting up companies here with malware and spyware, data centers, EVs with, and this is all fact checkable. Check it out. They're trying to surveil Americans and take Americans out from within, or spy on Americans. And Trump understood this. He understood that we are not truly sovereign if we rely on foreign adversaries for very important things like pharmaceutical, steel, and energy components. Okay. So the SCOTUS question misses the bigger point. Whatever the Supreme Court ultimately decides, the real shift has already happened. The world has adjusted to tariffs as a permanent negotiating tool. And, I think that the American people respect that Trump is using it as a negotiating tool for our best interest and to keep us sovereign. We've been forced to acknowledge that America actually has economic power, and the U.S. does not have to apologize for using their economic power. Americans have watched this under President Donald Trump. He didn't just change policy, he changed everybody's expectations. And how does this help you, the average American? Now comes the part, where I think Trump has to do better. He has to educate average Americans on how this benefits them. Okay. And it's not just the elites that benefit, and these people who run these huge company. Tariffs can lower the average American's long-term costs by bringing back jobs and production back home. Okay. Good jobs and bringing that production back home. It revitalizes communities. I know in the Midwest, places like Lincoln, small little towns, completely destroyed. It was like a town of 30,000. It's like a town of 10,000. The college isn't there anymore. And if you drive through Lincoln, it's one of the coolest little places. It's completely destroyed and abandoned. The manufacturing, there was a bottling manufacturing where they would make glass bottles, plastic bottles for drinks. That's gone. There's several manufacturing plants that shut down in that small community. So if you bring those back, you bring jobs, you bring production back home, you reduce dependence on unstable and hostile nations, you strengthen wages through domestic manufacturing, you prevent even supply shocks. And I point to what we saw during COVID where you couldn't get toilet paper. Yeah, now imagine if that was insulin, okay, which a lot of our insulin comes from China. For some odd reason, if China decided they could just withhold that insulin, we are making our own pharmaceuticals here. We're going to start making our own steel, our own electrical components, our energy components here in the States, and we don't have to rely on these hostile governments that don't like us and at any moment could pull the rug out from underneath us. So the long-term payoff here is economic resilience, and we're not relying on cheap junk, okay, imported and subsidized by slave labor, by the way, and we're not relying on foreign governments. Okay, so bottom line, tariffs aren't reckless. Tariffs are a strategy. Trump has forced the country and really the world to confront this truth. A nation that can't protect its economy can't protect its people. And that's not just good economics. It's national, or it's America first, national security. And I'm proud. I think it's incredible that Donald Trump was using the IEEPA. I hope he continues to use the IEEPA to impose tariffs as a form of national security. But if the Supreme Court rules against him, which I wouldn't be surprised, they've got other, it sounds like, alternatives. But it would be really bad for America to have to pay back what we've collected via those tariffs to do reimbursements. Like, how embarrassing would that be? Okay, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel. I'm going to be right back. I'm going to take a break, but we're going to be back talking a little bit about Maduro and the capture and how this is constitutional. There's a Democrat candidate out there saying Trump ought to be impeached for this. So I'll be right back with that. Hit that like button. We'll be back soon.
You ever tried to explain your faith to someone who doesn't get it? Like you're speaking a different language? Peter knew that tension. He told believers to live such good lives among the pagans that even if they accused them of doing wrong, they'd see their lives and end up glorifying God. Translation: let your life preach louder than your lips. It's not weakness. That's warfare. You don't always need a microphone. You need integrity. You need consistency. You need to grind with grit and grace when no one's cheering. People are watching how you handle stress, how you treat your wife, how you react when life sucker punches you. They're watching to see if your God is real, because your walk is the evidence. You don't get to control what they say, but you can live in a way that shuts lies down over time. Let your honesty wreck stereotypes. Let your discipline echo louder than their gossip. Let your kindness feel like a gut punch to a world used to selfish men. Because one day, maybe not now, maybe not soon, those same people who laughed at your faith might remember your life when they hit rock bottom. And when they do, they'll know who to call. Live like someone's eternity might depend on it, because it might. You want a pre-workout that speaks for itself? Patriot Pump doesn't need hype, just results. Clean energy, no crash, built for men who lead by example, on the platform or in the shadows. Fuels what matters. Train for legacy.
Smash that like button, share this out with your friends. All right, grab your coffee, folks, because we are talking about something that the left desperately wants to confuse you about. They want you scared. They want you to think about this emotionally. They want you to think Trump equals war. And their shiny new panic button here is the arrest of Venezuelan dictator Nicolas Maduro, according to Democrats and social media influencers who discovered the Constitution like 5 minutes ago. They say that this was an act of war. Okay, the capture of Maduro. I just want to address this. This is not a constitutional crisis. This is not a forever war 2.0. Here's the thing, and I'm going to tell you what actually happened. Okay, so we're going to slowly peel back this onion, peel back this propaganda, and talk about the Constitution, what it says, and what legal precedent shows, and why this fight says a lot more about Democrats than it does about Trump overreaching. They are desperate and they are panicking. They are trying to put this message out there for the 2026 midterms, and that Trump equals war and we're in a forever war. So I want to start with reality, okay, and not these social media influencers and their TikTok summaries. Okay, Nicolas Maduro was not, this is a reality, invaded. Maduro was not invaded. Venezuela was not occupied. Congress wasn't bypassed to start a war. Maduro was indicted by whom? A federal grand jury in the Southern District of New York, made up of 23 ordinary American citizens like you and me, and they decided to indict Maduro. Nicolas Maduro. They found probable cause for large-scale drug trafficking, money laundering, narco-terrorism. Okay, and all of that matters because this did not originate with President Donald Trump. Okay, much like the Jerome Powell probe, right? This didn't originate with Donald Trump in the White House. I told you back in July of 2025, Anna Paulina Luna, she referred Jerome Powell to the DOJ for criminal charges and to look into him criminally. So much like that, the White House, this didn't originate from the White House. This wasn't Trump waking up one day and saying, hey, you know what? I'm going to go capture a dictator today. This was the judicial branch doing its job. And when an indictment exists, the executive branch has to enforce it. Okay. And that's not tyranny. That's just how separation of powers works. Now enter in Kat Akabzaleh. She's a Democrat congressional candidate who says that this is basically the Iraq War 2.0. I'm going to play the clip here and yeah, you'll get a kick out of it.
This is so fucked up. The president of the United States is about to drag us into another forever war without congressional approval. I'm scared of that, but I am equally scared that Congress is just going to play along like they did in 2003. I mean, you don't want to be pro-drug trafficking, right? Even if we've given zero proof for our claims. We need Democrats right now to grow a fucking spine and stand up to Trump, along with any Republicans of.
Okay, zero proof of the claims. I just got to chime in here a second. What do you mean zero proof of the claims? I think that there's proof every single day in the streets of San Francisco, Chicago, where people are hunched over themselves, high out of their minds on fentanyl, but whatever.
Conscience. And that doesn't mean strongly worded letters. This man needs to be impeached, convicted, and removed as soon as humanly possible. This is literally what impeachment is for.
Now, remember, take this, file it, because if we lose the midterms in 2026, their first action is going to be to try to impeach President Donald Trump.
And I don't want to hear any excuses. 30 years ago, lying about a blowjob was a convictable offense. Starting a war without congressional approval has to be one too. Draft articles of impeachment today. And in the meantime, until that happens, we cannot allow Congress to sign off on this. Congress alone holds the power to declare war. The military is not supposed to answer to just a single man. It is ultimately responsible to the people and those that the people elect.
Okay. So dramatic, right? Here's the problem. She's arguing as if this is a declaration of war. It is not. There weren't tanks rolling into Venezuela. Okay, this wasn't boots on the ground regime change. This was a law enforcement initiative, and they were executing an arrest warrant. And I mean, sure, you got military, right? I mean, the military might be wearing like DEA vests or whatever, or FBI vests. And, you know, it's kind of funny how Trump went about this. I mean, this was definitely a military operation. They couldn't have done it without the military. But I mean, there's since 1801 or 1800s, presidents have kind of been doing things to skirt around Congress. Thomas Jefferson did it with the Barbary Pirates, where he said, hey, you know, we're kind of sick and tired of Americans getting looted, you know, when they're out on the seas. Don't mess with our boats. Here's what we're going to do. What Thomas Jefferson did back then with the Barbary Pirates, he said, fill up the boats with a bunch of riches, you know, or gifts. Okay. And what we're going to do, we're going to go travel out in our waters. And if there's a potential of risk, okay, where you think that your boats are going to be looted or shot at, I want you to respond. Okay. If there's a potential risk. And, you know, at the time, everybody was saying like, oh, you went to war with these Barbary pirates, Thomas Jefferson. How could you? And he goes, no. I said, if it was a potential risk and they thought they were at risk, that's defense, self-defense. So Thomas Jefferson did something similar like this, where he kind of skirted, you know, and I'm just calling a spade, right? It looks like he kind of skirted, but this is out of defense of America. Look at what's going on with the drug situation. Really, it's out of defense for America in that China is taking over the Western Hemisphere, and they're getting really, really close, and they're being adversarial with us by moving in to these South American countries, and they're taking over these countries. Donald Trump said, no, you're not doing that. So this was law enforcement executed an arrest warrant, by all appearances. Same thing with Thomas Jefferson. By all appearances, it was hey, they felt like they were at potential risk, and then they destroyed the Barbary pirates out on the waters. It wasn't a military command. Okay. And that matters. There is a legal distinction there. Now, this already happened. Well, like I said, the 1800s with Thomas Jefferson, but there's a more recent example that I want to talk about. And if you didn't get a chance, you can listen to the show yesterday that went live with David Shistokis, and he goes into great detail about this. But this is the most recent example where this Manuel Antonio Noriega, you guys remember this? Under George H.W. Bush, he was indicted in U.S. court, arrested with U.S. involvement, tried and convicted in the United States. And guess what? That operation happened under George H.W. Bush. And was it controversial internationally? Yes. I'm sure Thomas Jefferson, what he did with the Barbary pirates, was controversial at the time. International bodies complained about this. Yes, but here's the kicker. It was constitutional, it was legal, and it still stands as precedent. Okay, so Obama, drone strikes, Joe Biden drone strikes, airstrikes, and they didn't get congressional approval for any of that. You don't erase precedent just because you don't like who's in office. Okay, like there is precedent for this kind of stuff that Trump did, and a very recent example was this authoritarian Panama dictator, where they went in under George H.W. Bush and arrested him. Okay, so David Shistokis, if you watched the show yesterday, he made a very critical point that the media doesn't want to hear or talk about, that this was not a military operation in a constitutional sense. The FBI and the DEA executed an arrest warrant, and the military provided support. And it was treated like an extradition style operation, not a battlefield engagement. Even under George H.W. Bush, this was not as soft. Like, they captured Maduro under the Trump administration. And that was very clearly like extradition style. And they checked all the boxes before going into Venezuela. George H.W. Bush didn't do all of that when he went in for his dictator, his Panama dictator. But this extradition style operation, this fits under Article 2. Okay, so they cannot claim that Donald Trump was doing something unconstitutional, because if you read Article 2 of the Constitution, the president's duty is to enforce federal law, execute valid court orders, and protect U.S. interests abroad when statutes allow. And he used all of the statutes. And like I said, Donald Trump is pissing all these people off because he's using the law to his advantage, and really to America's advantage. And Congress is mad because they've lost control. They've already passed statutes that allow military assistance to law enforcement overseas. And, that wasn't like a loophole. Okay, this was just him using the law to his advantage and using the written law, Donald Trump. And calling this war is absolutely political theater. It is not a constitutional analysis. These people haven't read the Constitution. So what's really going on here? They're losing their control and they're mad about it. Democrats are terrified of one thing, of a president enforcing the law without asking permission from your activists, non-government organizations, foreign governments, and legacy media. He's doing it on his own, and he's using the law to his advantage. I don't know who's in his inner circle, but he must have legal scholars and advisors surrounding him, and they must be top of the top. Okay. It's funny because Congress is usually always fine with endless wars when the bureaucrats run them, when Congress runs it, when the intelligence agencies lie about them, Congress rubber stamps them, and they all get money because we enter these forever wars. But as soon as we perform, or Donald Trump performs a law enforcement extradition style operation, okay, and they touch a socialist dictator, suddenly they're constitutional purists. And I just think, give me a break, okay? Here at the Conservative Cat Show, I don't support endless wars. I don't support nation building. I'm for America first. I don't support reckless foreign entanglements. But what this is doing, and you have to respect it, Donald Trump is trying to say, hey, China, Russia, Iran, you guys are done taking over the Western Hemisphere and being adversarial with the United States, trying to destroy us from within by trafficking drugs into the United States. I'm going to support the Constitution. I'm going to support the rule of law. We're going to enforce indictments, and I'm going to be a president who actually does his job. This is what Donald Trump is saying. And like, this is the American legal system asserting itself, and it's America asserting itself on the world stage, saying, you can't take over the Western Hemisphere without our say-so. And the left is screaming. Why? Because it worked. That's why they're mad about it, and they're losing their control, and they don't like it. Okay. I've got to take a quick break, but smash that like button, subscribe to the channel. When we come back, we are going to be talking about the Portland police chief. He was crying because some TDA, criminal aliens, Venezuelan gang members were killed by federal agents, and he was shedding tears over them being killed. I'm going to share the clip with you, but we'll be right back. Smash that like button. I'll be right back. Welcome to Conservative Cat Clips, the show that cuts through the noise with claws out truth and unapologetic common sense. I'm your host, Kat. No fluff, just facts. Today, we're tackling the topic mainstream media would rather tiptoe around, and that's abortion, its history, its turning point, and what's happening now and where it's headed. Let's start with the past. In 1973, the Supreme Court handed down Roe v. Wade, and just like that, abortion became legal nationwide. It wasn't voted on. It wasn't in the Constitution. It was judicial activism, plain and simple. And over the next 49 years, over 60 million unborn lives were lost under this illusion that it was just healthcare, or that this is just healthcare. Fast forward to the game changer, June 24th, 2022. Dobbs versus Jackson's Women's Health Organization. The court finally corrected course, overturned Roe, and returned the power back to the states. Cue the media meltdown. But guess what? That's what democracy looks like. Local, real control. Right now, it's a state-by-state battle. Red states are passing laws to protect unborn life, some with heartbeat bills, others with total bans. Blue states, on the other hand, are sprinting forward, abortion on demand, some even pushing abortion access up until birth. That's not progressive, that's extreme. And here's where it gets even messier. Abortion pills. The latest front in this fight. The FDA greenlit mail-order abortion pills with almost no oversight. Think about that. A teenager can get these powerful drugs sent to her door without even seeing a doctor. Safe? Hardly. But the Biden administration, they were all in, treating abortion like it's the crown jewel of their social agenda. What's next? The future of abortion is being written right now. The state legislatures, in the courts, and in the culture, and at the ballot box. Conservatives are stepping up, passing strong protections, supporting crisis pregnancy centers, promoting adoption reform, and standing firm with both the mother and the child. Here's the bottom line. The fight isn't over. It's just begun, and we're no longer playing defense, though. We're shaping the culture. One law, one vote, and one voice at a time. This has been Conservative Cat Clips, where the truth cuts deep and the values stand tall, and we don't apologize for standing up for life. Hey, smash that like button, share this out with your friends. I so do appreciate you being here. Subscribe to the channel. Tell your friends to subscribe. Now, I don't remember Portland Police Chief Bob Day crying over the killings of American citizens committed by criminal aliens. Do you? Do you remember him doing that? I don't remember that. It appears he only sheds tears for gang members, specifically 2 gang members who were killed by federal agents. And he sheds tears for these 2 gang members, despite them being part of Trente or Gragua. The internet is now calling for his resignation, rightfully so. When it's your job to defend Americans, it's absolutely reprehensible to shed tears for foreign nationals who broke federal immigration law. But on top of that, they were also gang members, a part of a gang known to terrorize Americans, to traffic women, to rape them, to traffic weapons into this country, guns into the country, drugs into the country. Like, the math is not adding up here, folks. And, you know, the fact that this guy's got a job still is a scandal. Take a listen.
I want to speak for just a moment specifically to my Latino community.
Oh.
It saddens me that we even have to qualify these remarks, because I understand, or at least have attempted to understand through your voices, your concern, your fear, your anger. This information in no way is meant to disparage or to condone or support or agree with any of the actions that occurred yesterday. But it is important that we stay committed to the rule of law, that we stay committed to the facts, that we stay a trustworthy and legitimate police department for all of Portlanders.
Oh, that guy's so annoying. According to the Daily Caller, they do have some connection and some involvement with the TDA. We can confirm that, says Day, the police officer, the police chief there. And what I can say, there is an association with these 2 folks from yesterday and TDA. That's what he said in a press conference. And he goes, I hesitate to even share this information initially because I'm very aware of the historic injustice of victim blaming, oftentimes portrayed by law enforcement, including this very agency that I've represented so proudly over many years. And historically, we've not been quick to disclose the potential criminal history of others. He continued. So he says that he's hesitant to share this information. Like, the public has the right to know that these people were members of the TDA gang, right? But he was hesitant because he didn't want to victim blame. And he's very aware of the historic injustice of victim blaming portrayed by law enforcement, including this very agency. So his department that he's been serving. And historically, we have not been quick to disclose the potential criminal history of others, of the victims of, like, he's saying that these people are victims. Okay, these TDA members. And he goes, I want to speak specifically to my Latino community for just a minute, for just a moment. And then he says this through tears. He's choking up and he's saying, quote, it saddens me to even have to qualify these remarks because I understand, or at least have attempted to understand through your voices, your concern, your fear, your anger. What makes this extremely pathetic is that he cried over 2 gang members, okay, and called them victims, okay, and he was hesitant to share the fact that they were TDA members because that's exposing their criminality and we don't want to victim blame. Like, what are you talking about, okay? And then he ties these 2 gang members to the Latino community. He says, let me speak to the Latino community. Does he realize that a majority of Latinos aren't gang members? Okay, and they probably don't like being tied to these 2 TDA members, okay, or don't wish to be tied to this at all, right? Does he realize that just because they share the same ethnicity, these TDA gang members and the Latino community there in Portland, that doesn't mean that they're correlated? You don't have to come out and say, like, I feel really bad that I've got to talk about the victims and their criminality here because, I don't want to victim blame. I hesitate to share this information with you, Latino community, because you've been marginalized or whatever the hell he was saying here. And like, he started correlating these 2 TDA members at large with the Latino community at large. Like, there is no correlation here. They're just the same ethnicity. Okay, most Latinos are not TDA members. You don't have to step onto your virtue signaling soapbox here and try to appeal to the Latino community, because these people are not, I wouldn't say a part of like the legitimate Latino community, or like the majority of the Latino community are not TDA members. There's no correlation here. Okay, and the fact that the left believes that this puts them on the right side of history or is a scandal in itself. People like him are not compassionate for shedding tears for gang members. Okay. Like, people like him are not on the winning side of this issue when he's speaking out in almost, it sounds like, favor of the gang members who were killed. He's crying over it. He's shedding tears. And I've never seen him shed tears for actual victims of crime. Specifically the Americans who are victims of crime perpetrated against them by the members of TDA. This should not be controversial. He sheds crocodile tears as if that gets him some sort of like compassionate points, and it's deeply pathetic at the very least. And it's incredibly racist to try to correlate members of TDA to the Latino community at large, which sounded like what he was doing. And the sooner the left realize that's extremely racist, the better off they're going to be. The more compassionate they will be, if they realize that, hey, the Latino community at large, actually, they don't like the TDA members as much as, somebody who's ethnically white doesn't like TDA members. Considering this guy's from Portland, most likely he's going to keep his job, although the internet has demanded that he resign because he started to shed tears over these 2 gang members. It's just pathetic all the way around, pathetic to say the very least. And I don't get it. Why would you cry over TDA members being killed by federal agents? Don't know. And then further try to tie those gang members to the Latino community at large, and then apologize for victim blaming, calling the TDA members victims. They're not really victims. They kind of put themselves in that situation, being TDA members and all. And then they drove off and tried to weaponize their vehicle against the federal agents, which is what got them to be killed in the first place. So yeah, not victims. Whatever. I do want to talk about this story next. I got to take a quick break, but we're going to be right back. Smash that like button, share this out with your friends. We're going to talk about voter fraud, because a lot of people say it's conspiracy theory, but it's kind of funny because these conspiracy theories always turn out to be factual. And this is just another one of those cases where conspiracy theory turned out to be factual. But what else is new about that, right? I'll be right back. Smash that like button. Hey, you're listening to the Conservative Cat Clips. This is the place where we don't call 911 first. Nope, we pray, we prepare, and yes, we pack heat. Every time there's a tragedy, the media and the Democrats, they start crying, do something, and do something. And what they mean is more laws, more bans, and more restrictions, not on criminals, mind you, but on law-abiding citizens. So let me tell you what evil doesn't care about. They don't care about legislation. The man willing to break the sixth commandment, thou shalt not murder, doesn't blink twice at your AR-15 ban. Okay, he doesn't read your gun-free zone signs. He sees those signs and he says, this is an invitation for me. Gun control doesn't stop evil. It disarms good people. The founding fathers didn't give us the Second Amendment so we could go hunting. They gave us the Second Amendment to protect ourselves against tyrants, both foreign and domestic. And newsflash, tyrants don't tend to announce themselves. They come wearing smiles and waving around fancy policies. And I also want to talk about self-defense today. Self-defense. The average police response time in big cities like Chicago could be up to 10 minutes, sometimes even longer. I know the Chicago PD is really struggling with that. Response times in rural areas, it could get up to even 30 minutes response time. So if somebody kicks down your door, are you going to ask them to wait until the government sends backup to protect you, or are you going to protect your family and take matters into your own hands? So grandma, okay, in Peoria, Illinois, she is just trying to defend her property, but yet she's the one treated like a criminal. She has to go through all kinds of crazy background checks, permits, training. And the thug in Chicago, he gets the gun out of his trunk in an alley, and he didn't think twice about our laws, okay? It's about power. It always has been. Every dictatorship in history has disarmed their citizens first. First, that's Stalin, that's Hitler, that's Mao. They didn't want competition. And once the guns were gone, so were the rights, the freedom, and the people. So a disarmed people is a controlled people. But an armed, faithful, and free people, that is a nightmare for tyrants. And really, it's a blessing to your neighbors if you are armed. The Second Amendment isn't outdated. It's eternal. And just like evil, just like our right, just like the evil has the right to do evil things, and that they will, we have the right to resist evil and to arm ourselves. And the Second Amendment is pretty dang clear, shall not be infringed. This has been Conservative Cat Clips. Hey, smash that like button, share this out with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. Subscribing is the best way to support the program. But you can also visit patriotpumpenergy.com. This is our premium pre-workout. This is our fruit punch flavor. Patriotpumpenergy.com. Use promo code ConservativeCat at checkout for $10 off. This has like 2,500 milligrams of creatine, 150 milligrams of caffeine. This is a great alternative to your energy drinks on the shelves. Loaded with sugar, loaded with exorbitant amounts of caffeine. There's no reason for it. And, you know, I really think that your physical man and your spiritual man, and this is what Patriot Pump is all about, go hand in hand. You know, denying your flesh. It's hard to get to the gym. It's hard to work out. It's hard to deny your flesh and to have discipline. But there's so much reward, and it deepens your faith when you deny your flesh. And that's what we teach at Patriot Pump. We, put pre-workouts in local gyms, work with local men who are starting their journey in the gym. And we try to direct them into understanding that denying your flesh is a very spiritual experience. And it is to strengthen your spirit, man. Not just, for your looks or your own personal vanity. It is for a spiritual faith, or for faith in God, and to enter some sort of, or a different spiritual reality. And I think when we deny our flesh, you definitely, when you fast, the new food pyramid came out, RFK Jr., and I'm so pumped about it. It's a beautiful food pyramid. But what I'm waiting for next is for the Human Health Services to come out, the CDC to come out and say, hey, fasting is really good for you. I mean, the Bible commands us to fast. And denying your flesh elevates you to such a different place spiritually. And the goal here is to get men to recognize that and not just exercise for their own personal, vanity. So we do that through Patriot Pump. Get your bottle today, promo code Conservative Cat for $10 off. Now, I do want to talk about this conspiracy theory that actually became factual. But what else is new? Okay. So the left talks about election fraud. Okay. And when they talk about election fraud, they always have this line, county clerks, that this is what they say all of the time, and it annoys the hell out of me. They say, well, there's no evidence of widespread fraud. Okay. And this is a convenient way for them to convince people that there is no fraud. Like they say there's no widespread fraud, so we don't have to worry about it. And they use it as a way to convince people that there is no fraud. But if fraud does somehow happen, and in fact it does exist, they can kind of back out and say, well, we said that there is no widespread fraud. So when stories like this happen, they defend their lies and they claim that this isn't widespread. Okay. And maybe that's true, maybe it's not. But the point remains, the left does not want you to question things. They do not want you to talk about election fraud. They say it's not widespread, and it's kind of like a cop-out. So this is a story that I want to get to. The landlord is now being accused of election fraud after authorities are now accusing her of using mail-in ballots sent to her former tenants. So this actually happened, somewhat to me. So my mailbox, I opened it up and I had like 4 previous, tenants or residents, mail-in ballots shipped there because they've never changed their address. Okay. And I thought I would just, send them back to, or return to sender. That's what I would do with them because, I'm an upstanding citizen. But I think it's up to you to decide, like, hey, that's kind of like opening the door for fraud, isn't it? If you get mail-in ballots sent to your address, your residency, and it has somebody else's name on it who might have been a previous resident, like that's opening up the door to inviting fraud. Okay. Let's take a listen to this story. Here's the clip. The local news coverage.
Filling out and submitting ballots from her former tenants.
In Franklin County, an apartment manager with access to ballots from former tenants allegedly abusing the system. This confirmed by Detective Andrew Gardner in his investigation.
I was able to identify several other ballots that looked to have characteristics on the signature line that were not consistent with the signatures on file.
Investigators say 4 ballots were illegally submitted, with 3 being counted in the 2024 general election. The outlier was rejected because of a mismatched signature.
This case is still open, and we are still collecting information from community members that may have been affected by this.
According to the sheriff's office, the woman admitted to voting all 4 ballots and forging the signatures. She was booked into Franklin County Jail for 12 felony charges related to...
Okay, so I'm gonna X that out. According to Apple Valley News now, this Pasco apartment manager is now in jail on several charges related to voter fraud after detectives found out that she was filling out these ballots meant for her tenants back in the 2024 election. Okay, 3 of which were counted. So she filled out 4 ballots, 3 of which were counted officially. Okay, according to the Franklin County Sheriff's Office, on October 14th, 2025, detectives heard about irregular Franklin County ballot that had been counted in the general election. the 2024 general election, detectives investigated, and eventually they found the person had moved from Pasco to Oregon. Okay, so a Washington ballot was sent to their previous address in Pasco. Okay, so the ballot was filled out, sent to the auditor's office. Okay, and it was counted in the election. The Franklin County Sheriff's Office officials also said that detectives found 3 more ballots sent to the same apartment building were suspicious. Okay, so Franklin County deputies said that their investigation found 52-year-old Pasco apartment manager. She had taken the ballots that had been sent to her former tenants and filled out those ballots, forged their signatures, the tenants' signatures, and submitted them to the auditor's office. Okay, signed the envelope signature, sent them out to the auditor's office to be counted. 4 of the 3 had been counted officially. So the Franklin County Sheriff's officials, they said that the 4th was rejected due to a mismatched signature. Okay, so she admitted to authorities that she had forged the signatures and sent out the fraudulent ballots. I don't know what candidate she voted for. I'm guessing it wasn't President Donald Trump, though, and that's just a hunch. You guys can draw your own conclusions, but it seems like they received some sort of tip, maybe from the former tenant, that they had a mail-in ballot sent to them, but they had moved from that address to Oregon. And yeah, I don't know. Like, this is just obviously fraud, blatant fraud. She admitted that to the authorities. I'm assuming that she probably voted for Kamala Harris. That's just a hunch. I don't know. But there is a reason why the left couldn't care less about this story. Okay, because it does 0 favors for them. It negates the notion that there is no fraud going on. There is most definitely fraud going on. There are mistakes that happen. I've talked about those at length on this program in Cook County, McLean County, even, where they mistakenly sent ballots with return addresses to Macon County, rather to the return address being to McLean County, or some other kind of, maybe it wasn't Macon, but it was a different county than where the ballot was supposed to be sent to. In Cook County, I mean, straight up a bubble was missing from the Libertarian candidate there, running for, I think, a circuit clerk, lower office, but there was a bubble missing. So there's been mistakes like that happen all the time, but instances of outright fraud do happen. And when they do happen, you'll hear the left say, well, it's not widespread, so we shouldn't be concerned about it. But this is precisely why mail-in ballots are a bad idea. You have this landlord who has all these tenants, and, in apartment life, people come and go, and her tenants left, but they had requested mail-in ballots and hadn't changed their addresses yet. And the mail-in ballots got sent there, and she took the ballots out of their mailboxes and cast votes in their name. Now, this I'm sure has happened to you. It happened to me. At my prior residency, I had people's ballots showing up all of the time, and I would, take them back to the post office. I return to sender, but a lot of people don't do that. They'll throw it away, and that's not good, because that's a ballot. Throw it away. Where is it going to go? Where does it wind up? We should be treating our ballots like gold, because they are. So ballots were sent out without verifying whether those voters were still, and I know this happens in Illinois, ballots are always sent out without verifying that the voter actually lives at that residence. Okay, and they reside even in that state. In this case, this guy didn't even reside in the state. He was in a different state, and yet his ballot was sent to this apartment where this tenant or where this landlord had filled out the ballot for that tenant. So, that opens up the door for fraud. Okay. Things like mail-in ballots being sent to, people who don't no longer reside at those places. And that opens up the door for fraud, widespread or not. Like, clearly the ability for fraud to happen is there. Okay. So one vote casted, this was three votes that were casted officially. She attempted 4, but she only got 3 through. 3 votes were casted fraudulently, but I would say 1 vote casted fraudulently is a vote taken away from the people. And this should not have been made possible for someone to commit this kind of fraud. And there's a really easy fix. Let's just not do mail-in ballots. Okay. But the left, they've made it so easy to commit fraud. And I don't know why they don't want to secure our elections. That's for you to conclude, I suppose. But I'm guessing that there are far too many incidents like this that go unnoticed. Like, it sounds like and it's kind of vague how the detectives stumbled upon this. It sounds like they might have received a tip from one of the tenants. But it would not be crazy or far out there to suggest that there's incidents like that, like this, that go unnoticed. And that's not an irrational conclusion. Okay. And we have to make voting secure again. We have to. And step number 1 would definitely be outlawing any kind of mail-in ballots. We go back to absentee ballots where they were supposed to be for men and women abroad, like at sea, serving our country. Okay. Overseas, serving our country. That's the only people who should be having absentee ballots, mail-in ballots. That's it. And we have to make voting secure again. And it's not irrational to say that there is voter fraud. The left can say there's not widespread voter fraud, and that may or may not be the case. But there's definitely a potential for widespread voter fraud if we've got ballots being sent to voters who no longer reside at the place of residency. Like, if I was a complete jackwagon and wanted to participate in some sort of voter fraud, or didn't think that Donald Trump was going to win, I knew he'd win, so I didn't have to do this. But I had people's ballots shipped to my house all the time. I think I had like 3 or 4 of them, prior residents of that address. And I always did return to sender. But if I was a jackwagon, the potential is there. Where I could have filled out that ballot for Donald J. Trump and sent it back in. And would they have caught it? Would they have known? They caught this, a year later, right? This was 2024. Donald Trump has been president for a year now. This was for the 2024 general. They caught this in 2026. This fraud. Like, yeah. Yeah, we've got to make elections secure again. Smash that like button, share this out with your friends. Good morning, everyone. Praying we all have a safe and blessed day. Appreciate you being here. Faith in God must be shared. There are no rules when it comes to voting. Only fraud voting is allowed. Yeah, it seems like that for sure. Like, all of the rules are there are no rules really when it comes to mail-in ballots. Like, even here in the state of Illinois, it's legal to go and ballot harvest. So, say, for example, I was working on the Donald Trump campaign, okay, in 2024. I could go around to houses and collect ballots. So knock on the door and say, hey, I see you're a registered Republican. Did you receive a mail-in ballot? And if so, did you fill it out? And I can take that for you. And this is ballot harvesting. I can take that for you, and I can go turn it into the McLean County Clerk's office. And this is legal. I can't believe it. And they would hand me their mail-in ballot. I am not a member of the clerk's office. I am solely just working on behalf of the Trump campaign. And I can take those ballots and do whatever the hell I want with them, obviously. And who would know? Who would know? You take them, you ditch them, you throw them out the window. And you won't even be held responsible for that, because there's also a provision in Illinois law where ballot harvesters are protected if they get into, say, an accident and they're holding ballots, like a car accident, and the box of ballots just scatter all over the interstate after you've gotten into an accident. You're protected. You won't face any kind of charges, voter fraud charges, if those ballots just disappear. Okay. So, yeah, there are no rules. It's just the wild, wild west out there. And Donald Trump has been making attempts, the Trump administration, Congress, they've been making attempts to try to address voter fraud, voter ID, and do things like that. But not fast enough, in my opinion. We've got to secure those elections prior to the 2026 midterms. And I don't know if we're going to do it because they're right around the corner. All right. You guys have a blessed day. Bye-bye. Love you so much. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. We'll be back again tomorrow morning, bright and early, 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. It's Central Time. It's the Conservative Cat Show. Bye-bye. Love you so much.